Recording now.
Okay.
And let me go live. Good afternoon. I am here with Pastor Jim Kilmartin, and we connected at Cornerstone in Pittsburgh. And we've been connected ever since then. And he was actually at Cornerstone sharing about what God is doing in their church and community, which is exciting, what's going on with them, which he'll share a little bit about that. And I was there actually promoting a book I wrote, Go Preach Heal. And so we stayed connected. And recently, Pastor Jim and their church were very generous and gave toward the basketball project that we actually have just broken ground on in Haiti. And so we're building a basketball court in Cavaillon, Haiti, which is outside of the city of LiVecchi. And I'm super excited for what Pastor Reginald is doing. This is his second church. And so I'm excited for what God is doing. And I'm very also thankful for Pastor Jim and for their church and for his partnership and for the emerging friendship. And so today we're going to be talking about seeing the church engaged in society and the church becoming a voice, not an echo. And so we're going to kind of dive into some of those things. And so there's no on this interaction, there's no fly zone. So anything goes. You know, we hope to glorify the Lord and encourage his people. So we're hoping that this is a benefit to those who are going to tune in and watch. I'm just going to give you another moment or two. And if it is a blessing, then we ask that you would consider sharing it on Facebook or to your various contacts that you think would possibly benefit from this interaction. And I know it's going to be fun. It's going to be good. And again, Pastor Jim, I wanted to thank you for being with us. And I wanted to thank you just for your trust and for your partnership with us in Haiti. And I know when I shared the basketball situation to you, that was near and dear to your heart. You want to kind of share a little bit what you guys have done with that?
Yeah, sure. Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's good to have you, be on here with you and have a relationship, connecting with you guys. Yeah, we connected out at Cornerstone CTV, and I appreciate that. And when you and I were talking about some different things that were coming up, and specifically the basketball court in Haiti, we love that. I've been in ministry straight out of college, 1998, and I started a youth ministry called Joshua House, and really is a place to pull kids off the streets, out of a place of wandering. Like Joshua, he was the one that led them out of the wilderness into the promised land. So my heart and desire for young people is to help them find purpose. And to find their purpose, they got to find what God's called them to, and see that there's a promised land, that there's somewhere to be that's more than where they're at. God began to break my heart for kids, because I saw them and I'd talk to them, and they would be like, I just can't wait to get out of this town. I just can't wait to go somewhere else. I can't. And I'd ask them where, and they're like, I don't know, anywhere. But you saw hopelessness, you saw despair, and you saw a lack of direction in their life. And I was like, man, I wanted to get out of my hometown too, but the Lord brought me back after college and said, I need to be there. I didn't know why. And he broke my heart, and he shifted my heart. And I was like, well, what does this place have to offer me? I want to go travel the world. I want to go do missions. I want to go do ministry. I want to see people healed, set free, saved, all that stuff. And then my mindset shifted to, well, what do I have to offer this community? If I have Jesus inside of me, I have everything that they need. And so I began just to intercede and pray for and minister to kids on the streets. Now, they didn't live on the streets, but they basically did. And small town called Tyrone, Pennsylvania. And if you ever watched the movie with Denzel Washington of Unstoppable, they did a video there. That was part of the movie. It was pretty sweet. So I was the mayor of Tyrone when Denzel Washington in that movie was produced. It was pretty cool. So
wait, you were the mayor of the town?
I was, yes, yeah, yep.
You never told me that. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'll tell you that in a second. That you put a pin in that, because that's such a God story. But God broke my heart for the kids, and then one day there was a bunch of people they started to move to Tyrone to help us reach these kids. And so a community of young people started moving there, 20-year-olds, 30, 25-year-olds. And we were sitting around and said, you know what? You know something we should do for our town? We should do a 3-on-3 basketball tournament. And I said, we could do that. It'd be awesome. So we threw together a 3-on-3 basketball tournament downtown Tyrone, 15 teams. That's it. 15 teams showed up. But all of a sudden, it's like that statement, you know, watch and see where God's at work and then go join him. You know, the church too often in Christianity, we say, I want to go do something. God, come join me. But it's like, man, pay attention to where God's at work and then let's go join him. And I noticed that God put his finger on this thing. And it went to 20-some teams and so on. And it hovered around. And what?
1 second. We both learned that from Randy.
You're right. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, here's the deal with Randy is he invited me to travel with him back in 1998, but the Lord told me to go back to my hometown. So it was like, you know, go travel. And he's like, hey, I'm leaving State College from this City Reacher School or whatever it was at that point. He was just ministering there. I'm going to Redding, California. This is before Redding kind of blew up. And he's like, you know, come and travel with me. And I said, I can't, because God told me to go back to my hometown. And I was like, what the heck? But I love it because it was just part of what God was doing in me and developing. But we got this idea of a 3-on-3 basketball tournament, and we put it together, 15 teams, and 4 of them were our own folks. And then we just watched God do something amazing where we began to shut down the town. And we did it for 19 years. Last year, we weren't able to do it because of COVID. But we reached up 256 teams. So 4 players per team. That's over 1,000 players. About 5,000 people merge into our downtown and shut down the downtown. And it's phenomenal. It's called Hoops Fest. We were like, let's get a name. Hoopsfest.net is what we called it. And teams come from all over. The year before, we had people come from 10 different states to play in this 3-on-3 basketball tournament in a town of 5,500 people, you know, metro area of about 15,000. So it's small. And whenever everybody converges on it, it's a big deal. And players, I mean, fantastic players. And then at halftime, we do a slam dunk contest. We do a 3-point contest, $500 shot contest, some fun stuff. And we always have someone come and speak and present the gospel, sharing their testimony. Maybe it was an professional basketball player, globetrotter, whatever. And then we share the gospel right before the dunk contest. And you got 2,000, 3,000 people gathered together ready for this event. It's been pretty sweet. So when you said about the basketball tournament or basketball, I'm like, totally, because what we did was we took a bunch of that money and we invested it back into the town for basketball courts and parks and different things. And that's what we want to do, that further the gospel and use that as a great platform. So that's cool.
That's amazing. We may have to do that in another country. It's such a great thing that you did.
Yeah.
Maybe you could coach us a little in how to start another NBA.
I want to do it. I want to do Hoops Fest. I want to do Hoops Fest Madagascar. I want to do Hoops Fest other places because you can totally do it. And there's a couple guys in our church that are former professional players, and so we're like, well, I'm gonna take you guys with me, and you guys are gonna still, even though you're a little bit older, you still got game. So let's go play with these guys. It'd be awesome, and it's good. So anyway, that's why my heart was like, yep, I'm on that. Let's make it happen.
So that's amazing. So basically, through serving the community, it kind of spins into our next thing. It's like, so basically serving the community is what gave you a voice to the community.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so funny. This past Sunday, a lady came up and talked to me from our church after the service. And she said, this past week, there's in our county, they do a leadership program and they highlight servant leaders in the city. And she's like, you were mentioned this week 6 different times from people, and your church was mentioned like 10 times. I'm like, that's awesome, because these are all business people all over our region. And in the middle of COVID, when COVID broke out, we connected with Life Center Church, Charles Stock and Edgar and Pastor Edgar, and they've been doing a food giveaway. We've wanted to do that and we connected with them and said, now's the time, we need to do this. And so we launched ahead, and we started giving some food away right before Easter. Maybe it was, it's March, April. And we're like, this is amazing. Cars were, because it was COVID, you couldn't, like, people walked up, and they had, I mean, hundreds of people walking up with their carts, but these boxes are like 30 and 40 pounds. So these old folks, they're struggling, carrying their boxes. But they bring their cars in, and we have unloaded the truck, and people are coming up, and we distribute the food, put the box in their trunk or in their car, and we just pray over them and bless them, and they make their way out, and they're backed up 7-8 city blocks on both sides of the road waiting to come in. So this past Saturday was phenomenal, but we eclipsed 500,000 pounds of food that we distributed since COVID started. I mean, it's crazy. And we're not even operating out of a building at this point. We're just doing it out of a stinking parking lot and a tractor trailer. And again, it's finding solutions in the hour of chaos. It really, Christianity should be finding solutions in the middle of chaos. When we say the church should be a voice and not an echo. I'm teaching some things on the 7 mountains and spheres of influence, and 50 years ago was beautiful with the Jesus movement. But one of the problems with the Jesus movement was they were expecting Jesus to come back any moment, and so they withdrew from society. And so you see prayer withdrawn from schools, and you see Roe versus Wade happening. But what you saw is God moved, and then people withdrew. It's like, I was teaching last week on this, that the first public school was founded by Reverend John Cotton. And his purpose was to teach kids the Bible and teach kids how to study and be educated. That's the pastor that said, let's make this happen because we got to educate our people. Harvard was founded by pastors to train up people. William and Mary, Princeton, Yale, all started by churches and pastors. And so what happened over the years that now 87% of the professors in those places are liberal, and they are not engaging with God. They would have, there's the church. It's like a phrase, that what we start in the spirit, what happens if we try to contain it or continue it in the flesh? We miss it, man. It has to be continued in the spirit. But we've seen the church withdraw and be passive, which then allows something else. We're like, hey, the government can do it. They can do it. We get, I don't know what words you want to use, but man, we get wussified. We get so soft, and we're like, okay, we'll start it. This is good. And then we hand it off to somebody, and we don't keep it up. We gotta keep going and be a voice and not an echo. So I'll pause there a second.
Yeah, there's so many, I'm connecting with what you're saying on so many levels. One level, I wrote a book with a prophetic man. He actually married my wife and I. He was the first guy I traveled with. His name is John Natal. And on the book, the back of the book, it actually said, be a voice, not an echo. Mm. And it's a prophetic manual called Listen, Learn, Obey. So when you're saying that, I'm just thinking that's so interesting. So that was one thing. And then the other thing is, I really bear witness too, and I resonate with what you're saying in terms of universities. Now you have all these universities that have gone anti-God, and we're being lectured anti-God messages from universities that were founded in the spirit of revival, in the fire of God, in a passion for souls. Even, I don't know if you're aware of this, but if I'm not mistaken, Princeton, where the Bible school, where the seminary was, is actually where the atom bomb was made. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I think that is alarming is that when we withdraw from society, then something else comes and occupies that. And you
absolutely. Let me jump in on that saying, what happens when so many of these churches have closed down? All over Europe, what have those church facilities turned into? They've turned into mosques.
You know what? That was where I was going.
Yeah.
I was going.
And breweries. Mosques and breweries.
Yeah, I was actually, it's so interesting that you say that, because that's exactly where I was going. I was going to talk about Ephesus was founded in revival. There was such a revival and so much fire that that the economy was messed up, and then they didn't repent. The
Right.
lampstand was removed.
Right.
Because God, there's a powerful truth, is that God would rather be not represented than misrepresented.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the lampstand was removed, and then Ephesus, modern day Turkey, it's 99% Muslim.
Yep.
And that is the result of the lampstand being removed.
Right.
And I think sometimes people in America we think it couldn't happen to us, then 9/11 happened. And I understand within our history, you know, as Americans, we've had some bad stuff. We had, you know, genocide with Indians and slavery and abortion and violence. And I get it. I get it. No nation is perfect except the kingdom of God.
Right.
And even all of its representatives aren't perfect, you know. So I get it that our nation is broken. But sometimes I think, Pastor Jim, that I don't think people are aware of what is at stake if God would turn a nation over to its own desires and would remove, you know, his hand. And it's just like one of the things I was sharing with some young people is that most of the places that we go in the world to help and to serve, most of those places have contested elections. That was one of the commonalities, in spite of the language, in spite of the culture. One of the issues actually is contested elections, where the election is disputed to not know fully if it's actually legit. And now that same thing has come here, which it's very alarming, because some of the symptoms are right here in front of us. And so I think how we position ourselves in this season really matters. And so I think that we need to really remain prayerful that justice would be served as it relates to the injustices in our society, but also the election. You know, because remember, if a nation doesn't have borders and it doesn't have laws and it doesn't have a fair election, then it's not a democratic republic or a democracy, or it's not the free world. Yeah. And we've seen a lot of our freedoms attacked. And I think that there is this thing within many people to become passive. And I just want to just say that passive is not a fruit of the Spirit.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And neither is tolerance. And I think that we should love people and be kind to people, especially people who have differing views. But passivity and timidity, they're not fruits of the Spirit. In fact, they're anti-fruit of the Spirit.
Right. Absolutely.
So I think that if we're going to be a voice, I think that, you know, anytime you stand for something, then inherently you stand up against something else. And I think that the church is going to need a backbone in this season. Yeah. And I think that there's some people, and I don't want to say this in a harsh way, but in an honest way, I think that there's some people who are unfit to lead. And I think that some of that gets exposed during times like this, because I was telling people, like, this is a difficult time, but I'm telling you, this is a trial run. Whether you want to call it a trial run of socialism or a trial run of a hard time, but this has been difficult, and I get that, but it could get a lot more difficult a lot faster. And so I think that we need to be thankful yet vigilant. And what I love about your heart and just what you guys are doing is that you guys are really seizing this moment as an opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus in your community. Yeah. And to me, that's encouraging, because to be honest, like, I feel like our ministry is there, and we've done some small outreaches within our church, but I want that more for our local context. Yeah. And I'm really inspired, and I'm encouraged by what you guys are doing. And one of the things that's encouraging is when you get around someone who's kind of further along than you, it's encouraging. And I recognize that your church obviously is a lot further along in, you know, in what you guys are doing. And so it's very encouraging to me.
Yeah. Well, let me encourage you. So check this out, and anybody else that's listening. The government's doing a program. We're paying $2,000 a week at one point to get truckloads of food to distribute it. and we'd get more than $2,000 a week of people just showing up. I love it. I mean, like, God spoke to us and we needed to do this. And people were driving like an hour away saying, I hear about what you're doing. And they're showing up with like a couple $1,000 saying, here you go, here you go. And we're like, what, who are you? And this is awesome, because if it's God's vision, it's his provision, right? And so in that, we're doing that. We're doing it, and each week we're serving and we're giving money away, or we're giving food away and paying for it in the middle of shutdown. And then all of a sudden somebody reaches out to us from 3 hours away and says, I hear about what you're doing. We got a grant from the government called, it's a USDA grant, Farms to Families Food Boxes. And they said, it's free. And so I'm like, okay, $2,000 a week, free. Let's do this type of thing. And the food was phenomenal. I mean, fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, meat, dairy. Oh, man, your state has it as well. And so all we have to do is find our ways, and we contact those people, and they're bringing it. We're unloading it. We get about 100 volunteers out there every Saturday. People now that are outside of our congregation saying, we want to be a part of it. We want to be a part of it. And other churches. And it's so sweet. And so USDA Farms to Families Food Box, I encourage you to check it out, because I don't know, we haven't heard anything if it's going to continue in January, February, but I really think it will. But it's a great opportunity, and you don't have to have 1,000 boxes, but we're giving away 1,000 boxes. That's over 1,000 families that we're just, distributing to on a Saturday. Super cool. Looking for those things. I think it's good. I want to go back to one thing. When we talk about.
Can I just share one thing? Yeah. I'm going to have to get that info from you later. But one of the things that I want to share briefly before you jump in is that even in the United States, what you're doing in the church in terms of with a government grant, people don't realize that in many other places in the world, there's no safety net. Like when we were in the Dominican Republic, as a result of a hurricane earlier this summer. When we went there to bring food to the people, you know what the people said to us? Nobody came here.
Wow, yeah.
You guys were the first people to come here. No government help, right? So I'm not bashing government help. It's actually a result of prosperity, and the fact that the government is entrusting you to actually feed people. That's actually an amazing thing. And these are the type of things that are at stake if our nation spirals out of control. And I just want people to get that, because it's like when you tell, if I tell a Haitian in Haiti or a Dominican person, or never mind Africa, we're talking 3 hours away on a plane. If I tell them that, they don't get it. They go, the government is giving you boxes of food?
Yeah.
Like what? Like it doesn't even resonate. Yeah. They don't get it. Yeah. So so it's like even things like that are a result of prosperity. And I think that people sometimes don't understand what's at stake. So anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, here's an interesting thing. One of the most beautiful things, our people have been broken. Their hearts have been broken because people don't just come and get the food. Ones that are shut-ins and can't get out in our city, we go deliver it. So we load up, truckloads and van loads and just start taking it all around the city. And that's when our people get broken, because they see and they go into people's houses. And I was doing it, and with the one Saturday, the one day we had extra food. We had 100, 150 extra boxes that people didn't show up for. And this was early on, before we were publicizing much. And I looked at everyone looked at me and like, what do we do? I was like, now you go do it. You go do the stuff. And they said, what do you mean? I said, go and drive around the city and ask the Holy Spirit where you need to deliver this. Dude, it was so amazing, because we'd go and just show up at houses. I was on this one street. I mean, it was like almost vertical. And I see this people, you could tell they were struggling. And I walked over and I said, I got some extra food. Can I bless you with this? And the lady comes out and she just starts weeping. She's like, I've lived here for 25 years and not one person has ever helped me in my life. I'm like, dang, that's it. That's the stuff. And do we expect them to come to our church? Do we expect them? No, when you give to the needy, you're lending to the Lord. And so we call this program, we call it City Blessing, because that's all we want to do is be a blessing to the city. And we're not expecting anything in return. We just want to go be a blessing and let God's hand be upon us. So super cool.
That's amazing. We did something similar in a little bit of a different context, but I had everyone bring groceries, right? And I said, now I want you to leave the church on the way to your cars.
Yeah.
I want you to find someone and be a blessing. The whole idea is not them coming to us, but us going to them. Yeah. The command was to go. And I mean, if the Son of God is going to come through the womb of a virgin, enter into the realm of the earth, become a man, and step into our condition, and he's going to get off his throne and jump into a manger, we got to get out of the pew, and we got to get into the city. And I know that's your heart, so there's a major connection there, because that was what we were commanded to do.
Yeah. And
I don't know somehow how that translated into almost like the opposite. Like I get when the situation is bigger, and I get when food's being delivered and it's like a warehouse, and I get that, and I think that that's amazing when it's that size.
Yeah.
But I think that as much as the community needs to be blessed, and as much as they need, the community needs help, I think the people of God need help just as much, because I think our life can become so self-absorbed, and we can become so busy and self-intoxicated that we really miss the person in front of us. And it's like, for me, the poor doesn't just need me, I actually need them.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that I think keeps the ministry pure, is that we're doing things, consistently for people who are not going to do anything for us in return, and that's important. I feel that that's central.
Yeah.
To purity, and to, I mean, look at Jesus died for us when we were yet sinners. Like, there was nothing, we could offer him, right? He doesn't need anything. So I think that that's critical and central to the church being the church, and the church's actions being its voice.
Yeah.
It's like, we're known for what we're against, which is good. I mean, we should be against stuff, but I think that moving forward, if we're more known for what we do, people might start to give ear to why we're against certain things. Like, if you're like, why are you against, gay marriage? Well, because it's dehumanizing and it's incapable of producing life.
Mm.
And so instead of just saying we're against, we don't hate anyone, we love everyone.
Right.
But anything that dehumanizes and hurts people, whether it's immorality, whether it's greed, whether it's idolatry, whether it's corruption on government, whatever it is, we're against that. It's like the same thing. God hates divorce. God doesn't hate people who are divorced. He hates divorce because of the pain it creates for people he loves.
Yeah.
And so I think that with what I see in your life and in your ministry in the church, is just that you're gonna have a great opportunity to speak, but it's based on what you're actually doing, not just what you think or what you believe, but based upon the life that you live. Like, we were just in the Dominican Republic, and we had the opportunity to feed a whole police station and to speak to a whole police station. And then we had guys from the police station helping us feed other people.
Yeah.
And so based upon, the love that we have for the folks there, and the favor and the opportunities, we're able to speak from the place of, we're here to bless you. And I think that, it's a lot easier to receive when people see that that's why we're actually here. We're here to give. And I think that that's, generosity is the clearest expression of goodwill.
Yeah. Yep. So true. So true. I love it. I love seeing, one of the things I want to do is, so if I'm a Ephesians 4 pastor, teacher, evangelist, prophet, apostle, then my job is to equip the saints to do the work of the ministry, right? It's not just me doing it. I need to equip people. Yeah. And I love when our folks say, hey, pastor, what do you think about doing this? I had one guy say, I think in the middle of all of the Black Lives Matter stuff, coming against the police, why don't we step up and support the police? And I said, well, what are you thinking? He said, how about if we just go treat them to lunch, and we provide lunch for them and bless them? Great idea. Let's make it happen. So, we got a bunch of sandwiches, soup, salad, and brought it to their facility, to the barracks. And then they gave us a tour, and some people came, and then we got the opportunity to pray over their staff. And it was fantastic. And they said, okay, well, do you want a picture now? And we're like, no, I don't want a picture. We just want to bless you. And, it's one of those things. It's too often we're in this Instagram selfie world that, like, no, sometimes you just don't have to be seen in what you do. And I loved watching our team. And this isn't pastors, this isn't elders. These are different people that are in the church. I said, let's make it happen and empower it. I love it. So it's fun to see it happen, and we got to do it. We got to find ways to be a voice. The echo, we hear what others say, we hear what the prophets say, or we hear what the newspaper says, or what the media says, and then we echo it. My gosh, why can't the church be the one that's declaring it, and then the newspaper end up reporting on it? Like, I want us to at some point be at that place that we're declaring it, we're living it, we're doing it, and then the newspaper and the TV station is showing up and they got to report it because they can't help but see about the change that's happening. And it's good. It's good. Let me go back to the comment I told you. I was the mayor of my town, right? So it was a small community, but when I was 23, just a year into ministry, working with all these street kids, and none of my friends had moved to the town yet. I was kind of on my own. And then a prophet shows up. He was traveling with Ed Silvoso, and he was going out checking out all the territory, different towns all around State College, Pennsylvania. And he shows up in Tyrone, and the Spirit of God starts speaking to him, and he says, man, something different's going to happen here. God's going to use a mayor, and God's going to use a young man, and it's going to be different because it's going to be from the ground up, top down, whatever he said. It was crazy. And the pastor was with him, said, well, I know the mayor and I know the young man. Let's pull them together. So the mayor was a dignified lady that worked in state government for many years, retired, came back to the town to try to make a difference. And she got saved at one of our youth meetings. 66-year-old, very dignified lady. Bob Bradbury, who used to travel with Randy Clark, was leading the ministry, and he laid hands on her, and she fell on the ground and just like convulsing, and came up and completely saved, changed, transformed, and says, whatever you need to do, Jim, to work with these kids, I'm going to do it. I'm going to help you. I'm going to get money, whatever it is. Okay. So he pulls us together and pulls us into the mayor's office, prophesies over her for a bit. And then he looks at me and he says, young man, the very place you're standing is part of your purpose and destiny. And one day this woman will pass her mantle onto you, and you'll be the mayor of your town. I'm like, I don't know about that, man. I'm 23. I just want to hang out with kids at this point. And I took that prophecy. I'm gonna put that one on the shelf. I should have prayed that one through, but it's funny because in college, someone prophesied to me about business and said, I don't know if you like business or you hate business. And I love the prophetic word. I think that's the key thing here. And I've been directed in my life by the prophetic word time and again. Even though I grew up Methodist, the word of God came forward multiple times. Said, I don't know if you love business or hate business, but God says you're going to bring godly influence to the business realm. I looked at the guy. I'm like, man, I think you missed it. But that's it, because I just got a D+ in my business class. I wanted nothing to do with it, right? And then I got a C- in my poli-sci class because I just wanted to preach the gospel. My paradigm was I was going to be a Methodist pastor, or I was going to be an evangelist traveling. I didn't need any of that other stuff. I wasn't interested. Well, then this prophet shows up several years later and says, you're going to be the mayor. I'm like, really? And 6 years later, I win an election by like 110 votes over a dignified businessman. And I'm just a daggone kid. And literally, this is going to be a chapter in a book someday. I went from street kids, hanging out with street kids, to CEOs and senators in a day, and it was, and I had the opportunity to minister to him and prophesy to him. And now I own a business and have about 40 employees that work for me, and I'm in the right business at the right time. I own a commercial cleaning business, so everybody wants their facilities clean these days, right? So it's just like bam, and this year in the middle of a chaos, my business has doubled, and I'm like, all right, cool, let's do it. Just keep following where God's at, and we'll do it. So those words, you bring godly influence. Well, I get the opportunity to speak at Penn State to their business classes. I get the opportunity to meet with senators, CEOs, and all this stuff, and I'm just like, it's just God. I'm just a nobody. I was talking about how David was pulled out of the shepherd's field, and he was a nobody. But is there not yet another? And that's the one. And the world is full of little Davids that are out in the field that are being overlooked, being rejected, and they're the ones that God's calling. And it's like, he doesn't always call the qualified, right? But he always qualifies the called. And I just say, let's go, let's do it. And we're in a small town, and we could be like, what can we really accomplish? But it's not even about us. It's just about him. And so, you're going to the nations. Let's make it happen. In the middle of a pandemic, let's go change the world, and let's be the voice and not the echo.
Yeah, I love that. And there's a principle for all who are watching in terms of faithfulness. Like, you were faithful with the young people, God brought you to be a mayor. You were faithful with the church, God doubled your business. The lesson of faithfulness is that faithfulness yields an increase. And I think that people have to understand that, because the enemy tries to wear us out and make us weary so that we don't reap the harvest that God has for us. And when you look at Moses, Moses was tending sheep. God came for him. David, he was tending sheep. God came for him. Elisha was tending oxen. God came for him.
Yeah.
The disciples were cleaning their nets and casting their nets, and God came for them.
Yep.
Levi, he's sitting, he's a tax collector. He's working. God came for him. And I think that sometimes people don't realize how powerful faithfulness is and how it positions you, even when you're doing things that seem obscure, seem irrelevant. Yet God looks at that, and it's like God is not going to pass by someone who's being faithful and diligent with the right heart. And so, I just want to encourage, because there's people who are watching us. They're like, oh, I'm not in ministry, or I'm not doing anything, and I'm not doing anything significant in my life or with my life or through my life. And my encouragement to you is that when you're faithful with where God put you, and you're faithful with what you have, that faithfulness will open doors, and God will be faithful to you.
Yeah.
And he will bring you forward in the plans that he has for you. And even there's some people, they feel like they're in a standstill this year, and they may feel frustrated, or they may have gone through loss or great disappointment or sickness or any of these type of things that could have, confusion. Listen, if you're faithful, God will bring you forward. And I just want to speak that over you, those who are watching.
Yeah, and on that, and I'll say this, and I think this is a really important thing, is talking about faithfulness. Learn to serve another man's field. So every single one of those you're talking about, they were serving in the field. And often it's not your field. David, it was his dad's field. And so learning to serve in another man's field, another person's field, until the anointing comes. And I served in my pastor's church for 18 years, and there was often I'd get to preach maybe about 4 times a year. And I know I was a preacher, but I got to preach about 4 times a year, and it was tough, but it was a breaking, and God was doing a deep work in me. But I learned to serve, and I knew even from that early age I didn't want to go out on my own until God sent me, and He spoke to me. And he said, just like how Saul and Barnabas were set apart for me, Saul and Barnabas, for the work that I have for you. And I didn't want to go until I was sent to the apostles and prophets. And the prophetic word had come upon my life so many times, and I knew that when God wanted it to happen, he was going to declare it. And a prophet says, you're going to be the mayor. Really? I'm just a kid. I became mayor when I was 29 years old, right? I mean, that's crazy. But then I didn't want to go until it was the right time, and I was trying to be faithful, and it's learning to be faithful and undercovering. And then a prophet friend of mine was driving by my town late at night one night, and he said, hey, the Spirit of the Lord just spoke to me and said that it's time for you to break free. It's time for you to break free from comfortability and step into your next season. I said, I know it. I can feel it. It's been bubbling up. I just don't know what it is. We sat down together, and he said, I see you. I see you, pastor, and not where you're at, not in the town you're at, but in Altoona. And I was like, really? Altoona? I said, I didn't see that coming. And so I submitted that actually to Bishop Bart Pierce, because about a year and a half prior to that, he was ministering. We were celebrating 15 years of ministry for Joshua House, our youth center, and he was the keynote speaker. And afterwards, he said, mark my words, I'm prophetically speaking to you. You'll be pastoring soon. Well, I was already pastoring. I was associate pastor. I was doing Joshua House. So I didn't quite know what he was talking about. You know, sometimes prophetic people are a little vague and on purpose. And so I reached out to him and I said, what are you talking about when you said that? Because this is what was said. And he said, let me pray into it. He was with us in about a week or 2 weeks later in our church in State College, and then he began to minister to me. And he actually was kicking our church's butt, our leadership team's butt, for about an hour and a half, as he does. You know, he's beating us down.
Good.
And so because of our lack of outreach and different things, and then he stopped and he looked at me and he said, Jim, and I'll never forget it. You know, it was March 22nd. And I remember the day, I remember the moment, I remember the situation. You know, those are when it's etched in stone in your mind. And he said, Jim, you got to throw off all fear. Well, that was the first thing. And he said that like 5 times. And then he said, God's made you like a Nehemiah, sword in one hand, preach the word, know the word, use the word, understand it, you know, all that. But then in the other hand is the trial. God has also equally called you into the marketplace, into business, into government, and so on. You need to learn how to yield both of them, yada, yada, yada. And he goes on, and then he stops. End of the leadership training time, didn't minister prophetically to anybody else. And I'm like, my heart's like, woo, and I'm like, I walk up to him afterwards. I said, I think I know what you're saying, but what are you saying? Sometimes you got to like pull that out of him. He says, Jim, Jess, it's time for you guys to go. It's time for you to plant a church in Altoona. And when he said Altoona, I didn't tell him anything about Altoona, but the other prophet said Altoona. When the two, it was like word for word. I was like, dude, game over. Let's see. How does this work? You know?
Wow.
And I've been appreciative of it. And then it was a year later or whatever it was that year. It was later that year. We were at their annual convention in Baltimore. They laid hands on us and they started prophesying to us, John Kelly and Charles Green and Bishop Bart Pierce. And then they launching us out, commission us out. And then all of a sudden he said, Jim, I got Bishop Bart. He said, I got this thing about buildings. I see a building. He said, it's brown. It's got age to it. It's in a pivotal place in the city. And God says, it's yours. I've held it there for you. Well, 3 years, almost 3 years to the date. I mean, literally, that would have been November 4th, 2016, he prophesied that. I went home 3 days later, took a picture of a building. He said, that's the exact building I saw. And it's this First United Methodist Church right downtown, and it's a brownstone building, and somebody owned it, but they weren't doing anything with it. 3 years later to the date, November 5th, 2019, we buy this brownstone building. And now it had been empty for about 9 to 10 years, so a lot of damage, a lot of work to it. And and I was telling our leadership team yesterday, I said, one of the prophetic words over our church is that we will be restorers. We will bring restoration to marriages and families. And what we're doing with that building is we are restoring it, and it's got these beautiful stained glass windows. It was like it's in the basically the hub of the downtown, and has so much history, revivals that happened there, and we're going to re-stir up those wells of revival and call those things back. Andrew Carnegie was there and gave money. Teddy Roosevelt gave money to it. I'm like, there's something about that, and we're going to call those wells back. And a block and a half down the road is City Hall. Right next door to us is the Arts District and the historic Mishler Theater, where we're actually doing church right now, which is so cool. In this beautiful, like almost like Broadway-ish theater, because our building's being renovated. Right down the street, Penn State, Altoona's Sheets Entrepreneurial Center is there, and the business district. So God's plopped us right down in the center by all of these spheres of influence. And I know God has called us to be a voice into them and not be hidden, passive, or even an echo in this hour. So that's my word. That's my encouragement. I'm sure we could talk forever, but I know we don't have all the time. So
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And to me, it's very encouraging because when again, when you see someone who is beyond where you are in terms of church, it's always a great invitation forward. And it's also an invitation to persevere. And like right now, like what I've seen in measure with what God is doing with our church is that there are people who are getting in position, and there's like almost like a fort, like how like the like in terms of football language, the quarterback calls the play, and then they break out of the huddle and they're going into formation. So it's like we're starting to see some of that, and you just really have just encouraged me, and I appreciate you, man. So thanks for being with us, Pastor Jim. I just want to encourage again those who are watching, will watch, just to be faithful where God put you, and look for opportunities to serve. Maybe you see something in your church, or you see something in a ministry that you work for that's lacking. Instead of criticizing, and instead of withdrawing, instead of stepping back, I encourage you to step up and see how you can serve and be a part of the solution and be a part of what God is doing. So I just want to encourage you, anyone who's watching, with that. And anyway, bless you guys. Thank you, Pastor Jim, for everything. We appreciate your friendship, and I will see you again soon.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Bless you.